from Dallas. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGDFW for your tweets all weekend long. We've changed the hashtag. It was SCGDAL. Now it's DFW since we are in Dallas-Fort Worth. Forgus and Jessup are both on 6 cards. They'll be given the green light, and we will be underway here in just a moment. Don't forget, Danny Jessup, this tournament, very important for him, and last time he was in Dallas, made the semifinals.
Yeah, so the double mulligan is something that could favor the Reanimator deck. They have a lot of cards like Satyr Wayfinder and Courser of Crewfix that can undo the damage of a mulligan. Basically, the longer both players spin their wheels for, the better this is going to get for Jim.
Jim will play a Satyr Wayfinder. We'll take a look at the top couple of cards here. An Opulent Palace, Land Over Waste, with Veribos, and a Sylvan Carry added. He's got a little bit of a choice here between the land he wants to take.
Yeah, it really depends on what his mana looks like. He's going to opt for the untapped land is strong enough that he'll go ahead and lose the Opulent Palace.
Yeah, Land Over Waste will be added to his grip. Jessup with the second land. It's a copy of Temple of Malady. And Jim will take a draw. Well, you know he's got a land to play, that's for sure. Here's an attack for 1. There's Land Over Waste. Perhaps it's time for a Courser. It's just a Deathmist Raptor. And pass that turn back over to Jessup. Jessup off to a slow start here as he draws a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, so that's one of the dangers here is that, you know, you see the Sultai Reanimator deck. I always find it really fascinating to watch it play because it makes creature plays every turn. It's not particularly aggressive, but it's just valuing every turn. So there's just pressure on Danny to make an aggressive line because if they get into this value game, you're not going to outvalue the Reanimator deck.
It's a Windswept Heath, searched up a Plains. Jessup down to 18. He'll play Anafenza the Foremost and pass the turn back. We'll go back Forgus' way.
Yeah, Anafenza, a very important card in this matchup. Not just because it's a really good aggressive card. It's a 4/4 for 3, but it's one of the few matchups where its passive ability is very powerful.
Yeah, the fact that it removes cards from the graveyard. If they go to the graveyard from anywhere, they're exiled.
Yeah,
like
that second one.
Yeah, that part's super, super important. It's a Whip of Erebos deck, and some creatures may be going to the exile zone in just a moment here, like that Courser and that Satyr Wayfinder. Those are gone for good. Now, Forgus does have a Temple of Malady and a Forest to choose from.
Yeah, so we'll turn Satyr Wayfinder into a fair card. Now all this is this one that usually gets you a land. It's not preparing the graveyard.
Let's see what the follow-up's going to be. It's going to be a murderous cut to get Anafenza out of here. So that problem is cleared up. Here's an attack. It'll be an attack for 4.
Right, and even if you look at that line, you know, Jim needed to hit 2 non-creature cards, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to cast Murderous Cut that turn.
The Temple. Top card goes to the bottom, pass the turn back over to Jessup. Obzon Charm the draw.
Yeah, one thing that, at least from the when you get to the more controlling Obzon strategies, Obzon Charm gets a lot of pressure on it these matchups because you really want to hit Deathmist Raptors with Obzon Charms. From the Obzon aggro side, it can be a little more particular. I think Danny is still going to want to make sure that play happens, mostly because this is a very Obzon control-esque hand that Danny has. While normally he'd like to curve out with creatures and beat down, that's not really what's going to happen this game. As you see, I think he's going to go on a line of make a Fleece Mane Lion, then exile away Deathmist Raptor, and just try to maybe draw a couple cards to the Obzon Charms, play a Siege Rhino, and play this value game.
It is certainly nice to be able to shift roles when you're playing this Obzon aggro deck. Yes, it can be in a very aggressive deck at times because the creatures are large and efficient, but in this particular game with how his hand is kind of lined up, he's definitely the control deck at this point.
Yeah, his hand is 3, actually I believe it's a Siege Rhino and 3 Obzon Charms.
It's an awkward one. I mean, a lot of gold cards, but if it's a lot of gold cards, that means a lot of powerful cards. He's going to use Obzon Charm right now to exile the Deathmist Raptor. There's only nonsense to happen.
It's interesting. It's an awkward hand when you think about it from an Obzon aggro style point of view, but like if I was an Obzon control deck, I love that kind of hand.
Sure.
It's like, oh, these I have a grip of kill spells and I have a grip of card draw, and oh yeah, I have a Siege Rhino. He's still the best card in my deck. So
Heir of the Wilds was the draw. Here's Siege Rhino. Now, keep in mind, with the Temple, Forgus kept his top card on top real fast. So I'm interested to see what this is going to be as it takes a draw step.
Well, he didn't. So he drew Heir of the Wilds, but didn't cast it that last turn?
No, so Danny drew Heir of the Wilds.
Oh, there we go.
But Jim kept his Jim scried and kept this card on top really, really quickly. It was a copy of Deathmist Raptor, but it was just the way that he scried, he kept it on top very quick. I wasn't sure if it was a card like Sidisi or what have you. It just ended up being a Deathmist Raptor, which for Danny is not the end of the world, actually.
No, this triple Obzon Charm hand, you see, once again, this is so important to charm the Raptors, hit with Rhino. Danny's playing like a control deck right now, and he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do.
He'll take 1 from the Anakin Influence to play Heir of the Wilds, and it'll just be a passing of the turn. Jim does have some very big draws here. Card like Hornet Queen, one of the Sidisi's, of which he has 6 copies of. 4 Sidisi Brute Tyrant, 2 Sidisi Undead Vizier.
Yeah, I mean, that is the issue, is because Danny is on a deck, because even though he's playing a control game plan, Danny's on Obs on aggro, a card like Hornet Queen is very difficult for him to get through. He doesn't have things like Elspeth or Bile-Blight to fall back on.
And it's going to be a morph. Looks like it may be a Den Protector. He's got the Den Protector Deathmist Raptor package in his deck right now.
Yep. So looking to begin right now, the graveyard is just Rattleclaw Mystic and Murderous Cut.
Yeah, Raptors have been exiled, so they're not going to come back if it is a Den Protector and it is unmorphed. So that's a nice thing here if you're rooting for Jessup, because he does not have to worry about that. Danny's going to start, it looks like, with a Temple to get some information. So he'll scry with Temple of Malady. That top card, it looks like it stays on top pretty quick for him.
Well, what Danny has to decide is how he wants to use this last Obzon Charm as a resource. There's a couple lines. If Jim flips up a Den Protector, he can be aggressive and Obzon Charm to remove the Den Protector. But then, you know, then he uses it just as a kill spell on a creature that wasn't that good. He can, at the same time, use it to pump an Heir of the Wilds if Jim goes for that block, or he can just draw 2 with it. And they're all reasonable lines.
There's the attack. Ferocious Trigger, make Heir of the Wilds into a 3/3 since Siege Rhino was out there. Here's a block. Will we have an unmorph? This is interesting. Okay. So there's your unmorph. It's Den Protector.
Yeah. Well, the Heir is a 3/3, yep. So the action is on Jim. He's going to get back Murderous Cut. Now that it's a 3/2, so now Danny has to decide, does he want to, I think it's put 2 counters on the Heir of the Wilds, or does he want to let this trade happen?
Yeah, how he uses Obzon Charm here is very important. Let's not forget, though, that Danny did scry and keep the top card on his deck. He did it pretty quickly, too. So clearly he's happy with what's on top of his deck. Does he want to draw it this turn? Not entirely sure. Does he want to make Heir of the Wilds a little bit bigger? Does he want to make Siege Rhino bigger? Again, not sure, though he does have to worry about a Murderous Cut that's in the opponent's hand now.
Yeah, I would assume that right now that the Murderous Cut is going to tag Siege Rhino. That's why you don't want to pump Siege Rhino or anything. The question is whether or not Heir is worth a card to keep around, or whether it's worse than just another generic card.
Well, he's casting Obzon Charm. The question is, what mode will he be picking?
Yeah, 2/0 or 1/1.
Yep.
It'll be 1 on each of them.
So he'll split the counters up a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. If he puts them both on Heir of the Wilds, then Heir of the Wilds starts to trigger itself when it attacks. Now, it'll be interesting to see what Danny kept on top of the deck. That certainly is influencing his decision. This one does get the most damage right now through.
If Forgus sacrifices Blue to Delta, he can cast Murderous Cut at the end of turn. I think he almost untapped and realized he could do that, so he's going to sacrifice a Delta, search up an island, and now he can delve away the rest of his graveyard, the Rattleclaw Mystic, the Den Protector, and the new Delta to fire off Murderous Cut. You have to imagine he's going to kill the Rhino with the cut. Yep, and Danny's already picking up the Rhino, so that's going to go to the graveyard. Big draw steps available here for Jim.
Because he's had to delve away most of his graveyard, something like Whip of Erebos is not as troubling right now, but you're absolutely right. I mean, a swing of 1, I mean, Sidisi Undead Vizier would be the perfect draw.
Doesn't look like he found anything useful. What's this? Is it a Rhino?
It's a Rhino.
That's pretty good. Playing that pre-combat for Ferocious.
Yep, so that would force the block here.
Yep. There is the block, as it would be a lethal attack. Pass that turn back, Forgus. Big draw here.
And even now, 1 copy of Sidisi Undead Vizier evens the game out.
Yep. Two mana. Thoughtseize, target himself. Yep, there's a Thoughtseize. That's going to do it. Danny Jessup's going to win game number 1 here over Jim Forgus. Obzon aggro up a game over Salter Animator. Back-to-back Thoughtseizes. Not the right time to draw those.
No. That was actually, the pacing of that game is a spot where I think Jim would be the favorite. When you force the Obzon aggro deck into a control role, the aggro player runs the risk of being beaten by your late game cards, whether it's a Whip of Erebos or a Hornet Queen or Sidisi Undead Vizier. Those things can run away with the game. That said, Jim still has to draw one of them because until he gets that engine going, they're still playing Fair Magic, and playing Fair Magic against Obzon is always difficult.
It certainly is. Wasn't able to get the job done there, but he'll go to the sideboard, and we will take a look at his sideboard, which you... Actually, I have that in front of me, so I'm sorry. I'll apologize. 2 Drown Sorrow, 2 Duress, 2 Ashiok, 2 Crux of Fate, a Disdainful Stroke, a Reclamation Sage, a Bile-Blight, a Dragonlord Slumgar, a Dig Through Time, a Foul Tongue Invocation, and a copy of Sagu Mauler. Interesting.
Yeah.
Not going to see that one coming, I have a feeling, if it does show up. I actually kind of like Sagumon in this matchup. I like the Foul Tongue Invocation. All the creatures are worth killing. Dragon Lord Slumguard, pretty good in this matchup, too. Dig Through Time if things can go late enough. Crux of Fate, too. I think there's some really nice options available here for Forgus.
Well, we see both players polarize their game plans. Jim wanted to be the control in this matchup, and Danny wants to be the aggro. And you generally see both players board that way. So Jim becoming more of a control deck. Yeah, Crux of Fate's great. Ashiok seems pretty reasonable. Dragon Lord Silumgar, Dig Through Time, Foul Tongue Invocation, these are all pretty good spots. On Jessup's side of the board, he wants to still try to become a little more aggressive. So maybe he boards in a card like Wingmate Rock, the last one, just to get in the air more. He doesn't have too much for the matchup, is the big issue here. If you look at the things that are in the sideboard, you know, Hornet's Nest, Drown in Sorrow don't really work. Self-Inflicted Wound has the problem that you're going to get too many mediocre cards like Satyr Wayfinder with it. He has 2 copies of Tassiger. They're reasonable here, but Danny's playing with his Game 1 deck almost entirely.
Yeah, and I think that the additional copy of Winged Rock is pretty smart. You know, this deck, much like most of these Will Variables decks, they're just weak in the sky.
Yep.
And a lot of the decks, honestly, in this particular standard format are pretty weak in the sky, and that's why Winged Rock is so good in this particular format. So wouldn't be surprised to see Jessup board up to the 4th one here.
Yeah, I think I could say like all the Corsair Kruvik decks are weak in the sky.
Yeah. Not a lot of them going towards card like Arbor Colossus at this point. You know, the Dragon decks are pretty good in this guy for obvious reasons, but you just don't see a lot of those right now. Season 3 schedule is where we're going right now. We will discuss what's coming up in the Open Series. Season 2 is almost over. Season 3 is going to kick off with Grand Prix Charlotte, but we got a lot of great stuff after that.
Yeah, so we're starting with Grand Prix Charlotte. We told you about that one. Then we're going to go ahead and go through the Midwest. So we have a Standard Open in Indianapolis the following week. Then we keep on Standard through Baltimore and Chicago.
After that, we'll go to Richmond for a Standard Open. We'll do a little Legacy action in D.C. There will be a sweet Grand Prix that takes place in London, August 14th through the 16th. More information coming for that once Grand Prix Charlotte is over. We can only do so much with our Grand Prix that we try to blow out of the water. Then we'll have a Modern Open Series in Charlotte, and we'll finish up with the Season 3 Invitational in New Jersey. Standard and Legacy action. Me, you, and Patrick will take care of that along with the Standard Open Series event at the back end of August.
And just for those of you playing trips, that was the format for Grand Prix Charlotte, or for SCG Open in Charlotte and the one in DC did change formats.
Yes, they did. So that's certainly something to keep your eyes on. StarCityGames.com for more information about that schedule. We expect to see most of you during Season 3 at some point. Because school's out, it's the summer. You have no excuse, you should be playing Magic. I'm looking forward to Chicago, I think, the most of those shows.
I'm definitely looking forward to having a SCG Open in Chicago. We haven't been there for a while. I will be playing in the event if I'm not commentating. I don't believe I'm commentating.
Patrick and I are commentating it.
Yeah.
I expect to see you doing battle with Siege Rhino. Ugh.
I hope not. I hope there's something. It's the control deck of the format. I get that it's not blue.
I know. I just can't. I can't imagine me saying you casting Siege Rhino.
I hate it too. I'm not a fan.
I'm much more comfortable saying Matthias is going to dissolve a Siege Rhino than getting his Siege Rhino dissolved.
It's better to say you're just not dissolving a Siege Rhino. That's better. He just lets it resolve because he doesn't care.
Matthias is going to go down to 23 now.
Right. That's the story I want to tell.
He's going to hold his dissolve in case his opponent does something relevant. I guess that's the dream scenario for you. That's fine.
The only thing better than dissolving a spell is not dissolving a spell.
Yeah,
that's way better. He has 2 dissolves. He's just not using any of them.
What's he doing? Why is he casting it?
Just waiting until his opponent does something that matters.
Yeah, this is why I never play blue decks. It's just not me.
The trick to playing blue decks is to find a really comfy chair.
Fair enough. Jim will be on the play here for game number 2.
I don't want to leave. I'm comfortable.
Yes,
this is great.
This is great. I'm never leaving ever. See if he can find an opening hand that he is happy with. Just up taking a look at his hand. Looks like both players are happy. And game number 2 underway. And Jim will start with a swamp and a passing of the turn. Jessup will take a draw. He's got a Sandsep Citadel, and he'll play that and pass the turn back over to Forgus. Turn 2, let's see if there's a Satyr Wayfinder. Maybe a carry at it. Just a passing of the turn after that Llanowar Waste.
Yeah, what really stood out to me that first game is Jim has a lot of different ways that his engine can work for his deck. You know, you see Sidisi, Undead Vizier, either Sidisi really, Whip of Erebos. These are great things that his deck can do. Also Death Mist Raptor. So he kept his first game one, his card advantage plan was recurring Death Mist Raptors. And because Danny's hand was long on Obzon Charms, he was able to turn Jim's deck into a 1-for-1 deck and play a fair game. And then Danny was able to pull ahead.
Course of Crewfix. Jim had to take 2 to cast, I think, so those Llanowar Waste. Temple of Malady on top of the deck. He's on Jessup's turn. He took 1 to play his Rashasha Death Dealer. This is a Thoughtseize. Jessup's going to go down to 17. We'll see what Forgus is working with. He's got a Den Protector and a Death Mist Raptor, Sidisi Undead Vizier, and 2 copies of Erebos.
Well, normally I'd say Danny would take a whip, but with 2 of them, that doesn't work very well. This hand is very good against Thoughtseize.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I am inclined to want to select Den Protector here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Den Protector is pretty reasonable to take. If you think the game's going to go very long, you can take the Sidisi, but Sidisi is not a huge threat because Jim doesn't have something great to sacrifice to it yet. I mean, you definitely don't want to take a whip, and you definitely don't want to take Death Mist Raptor.
Yeah. So you're almost pigeonholed into one of those 2 cards. It's a tough decision, I think, here for Danny. I suppose he could take a whip if he has a card like Jaroka's Command in hand.
Well, okay, so if he had a card like Wingmate Rock, he would normally be able to not care about Sidisi. However, Whip of Erebos changes that equation.
He took the Den Protector. He'll play a Plains.
Oh, Plains Rakshasa Death Dealer combo. Yeah. Looks like there's no attacks this turn.
There's Jaroka's Command. Well, there are attacks. Take it back. Get that thing out of here, put a counter on, get in the red zone. Forgus going to draw that Temple of Malady. Death Mist Raptor time, probably. Have to take 2 to cast it. Yeah, there that is. There's a Temple. A little scry action here for Jim. Top card, staying on top, maybe.
Well, Jim's got a great situation. He's got a Whip of Erebos in hand. Got 2 Whip of Erebos in hand. That one less good. And actually, what I like is that Janny adapted his gameplay there. So because there were 2 Whip of Ereboses, he uses Jaroka's Command aggressively because he doesn't actually care about removing the whip anymore.
Sure. Here's the attack with Regeneration mana available. It actually kind of slides the 2 lands together. Make it very clear that if you do block, I'm more than happy to regenerate.
What I like about the game plan Danny has set up is that he can Obs on Charm the Death Mist Raptor, and then suddenly the cards like Whip of Erebos and Sidisi, the cards that he left in Jim's hand, aren't that effective.
And they're pretty poor then.
Sidisi has nothing to exploit. Like both Sidisi and Whip require creatures in play to be good, and Danny is doing a great job of just keeping Jim off creatures.
It looks like the follow-up is going to be another Death Dealer, and it is. Temple of Silence after this. Maybe. Yes. Top card. That's going to stay on top past the turn back. Jim Forgus will draw.
See, Obs on aggro, I know it's still Obs on, it's a tricky deck, because when I look at that situation, I just think, oh, I have to Obs on Charm the Death Mist Raptor. I have to play my kill spells on their creatures. But I do like Danny's play, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility with the deck.
Well, there's just a lot of role assessment. You know, the difference, do I need more threats? Do I need to get rid of the Death Mist?
See what Forgus wants to do now. We know he has 2 whips. That much is obvious. Danny knows that too, thanks to Thoughtseize. He's going to start by attacking. And not playing whip pre-combat either.
Hey, I'm assuming that means he has something else.
Yep.
Just be a Satyr.
Yeah, there is something else. Take a look at these top couple of cards here. A Swamp, a Polluted Delta, a Temple of Malady, and a Disdainful Stroke.
So Whip Sidisi is still his hand, so I imagine we're going to see a Temple get taken. Unless he really needs a blue source, but I don't believe he does.
There's a Temple. It's going to enter the battlefield. Take a look at that top card. It's going to become the bottom card very quickly. Did not like what he saw. And going to pass the turn back over to Jessup. Jessup going to untap. He'll be drawing here in just a moment. Picks up a copy of Tassiger. Danny's hand, not all that great, though. A lot of lands over there. Though lands aren't terrible when you have Death Dealers in play.
Jim, going to go ahead and chump with the Satyr. I was curious to see whether he would do that or try to save it for the Sidisi. Danny working with perfect information here. He knows all 3 of the cards in Jim's hand.
Let's see how aggressive he wants to get maybe with this other Death Dealer.
Yeah, well, if he's planning to Obs on Charm the Raptor, he is going to have 2 mana left over if he just wants to pump.
There's a land. And there's Tassiger. So kind of delve away the Thoughtseize, leave Dromoka's command as a possible hit. And we're going to go Jim's way. Again, 2 Whip of Erebos and a Sidisi Undead Vizier in hand.
Yeah, it looks like he may actually not have had the Obzon Charm. So I believe he's now just on Sandstep Citadel, Caves of Koilos. So all his resources are on the board, but he has Jim down to 8 and has a much stronger board presence.
And he's got plenty of mana to activate those Death Dealers, too. You take a look, there's the combination of 2 black and 2 green out there, along with a plane, so 2 activations for Death Dealer.
He's doing a good job of keeping the board at a spot where Rip of Erebos isn't doing too much damage. He has some of his sideboard Tassigers in play, so while he's out of resources, he can continue to get more cards here.
Forgus played a Forest for the turn. That was his draw. I can't imagine we're going to see Deathmist Raptor come to the red zone this time. It's maybe time for that thing to slow down a little bit.
Well, he just doesn't have too many options. This is a spot where I don't know if that block with the Satyr Wayfinder last turn may have been a little too hasty. I know he would be at 5 without it, and maybe even at 3, but he just had to play Sidisi with no exploit that turn instead.
Yeah, and that's really tough. And offensive the draw. That's tough too. I think we might, from Danny, we might just see a pre-combat and offensive and then attack with some stuff. But
yeah.
Then again, maybe not. We'll see.
The Sidisi's going to do a good job of holding down the fort. 3/6 or 4/6 Death Touch is not easy for Obzon aggro to get through.
Yeah, Sidisi stats, and actually the attacks of Death Touch, it lines up really, really well against Obzon.
So he's got some ways he can try to get through it. If he Tassigers enough times, he can maybe get that Dromoka's command back and fight her down. But there is some pressure for Danny. He may try to get that Dromoka's command back anyway, just so he can start dealing with cards like Whip of Erebos.
He's got a lot to think about this turn, though.
Yeah, and I mean, trying to go over that line is risky. You generally don't get the card you want off Tassiger anyway. He'll probably get a card that he doesn't know about yet.
Yep. No guarantee to hit 2 lands here, of course.
Right. You only get to hit 2 lands when you have an empty graveyard.
That's true. That's how the card's designed.
Yeah.
And Jessup is really thinking away here. And what's interesting, he's up a game. He's in a pretty good spot. And this is obviously a very important tournament for him. So he's going to be taking his time on his turns. He does not want to make a mistake here. And it looks like he's going to go the inoffensive route. Forgus was maybe expecting his Sidisi to die, but that is not the case. And now he's just going to pass the turn back, so he's going to have to try to be very patient.
Well, now it's dangerous because Jim has his card advantage engine online. He's going to have Whip of Erebos. He has a stocked graveyard. Now, it's being hampered by Anafenza, so he's not going to get any new creatures in the graveyard. But there are things to whip back already.
Yeah, and the fact that he can just play Whip this turn, pass the turn back, and say, my creatures have lifelink now too. So now you have to try to slog through that is actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah. But then again, Danny still created enough pressure that Jim wasn't able to exploit Sidisi. If Jim has gets at any point here, got to have an extra card in his hand of his choosing, this game would be very different.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, he would probably have gotten, say, Hornet Queen. And then we'd be talking about how, well, one more land and Jim's going to play Hornet Queen, and then the game will be turned on its head.
Jessup will draw. Siege Rhino. Never bad.
It's never bad. That is one thing I've learned from playing a lot of Siege Rhino. You're always okay drawing him.
Yep. Now Jessup has to decide how he wants to attack as he reorganizes his mana. Siege Rhino is an option for this turn. Activating Tassiger and maybe getting a perfect hit is another to get the Dromoka's command back, and a little fight plus kill your whip action, but some things would have to go right for that to be the case.
It's tough because most of the attacks Danny makes end up negative on damage because he'll have to swing into Sidisi, regenerate, then Jim gains 4, then Jim can attack back, and then Jim gains 2. All his creatures have lifelink. Racing's really hard.
Danny going to play land number 7, which is Caves of Koilos. And Death Dealer.
I like this attack. This is really well thought out on Danny's side. It's a 3/3 Death Dealer, so Jim has to block or Danny can triple pump it and make it lethal. Because it's just one attacker, he's just going to get to eat a creature with it.
Okay. Deathmist Raptor going to get in front.
Really heads-up play.
Wants to make sure he can tap his mana in such a fashion that he doesn't have to take any damage. So there's your regenerate, which means this will take care of the Deathmist Raptor. Uh-oh, Forgus reaching maybe?
Yeah, maybe he has something here.
All right, no dice, just going to gain 3 life. But Deathmist Raptor is gone for good, so that's going to have to be exiled since Anafenza is in play, which Danny points out very quickly.
Yeah, that was part of the game plan.
Yep. And now he can follow up with the Siege Rhino. If he wants to, which I imagine he would.
I just keep thinking this game would be different if Jim could have something like Hornet Queen.
Yeah, if he just got to tutor.
Yeah, if he got the tutor, it'd be great. But as it is, I think Danny's leveraging the Anafenza and the fact that he has more board presence really well. Like that attack there, the fact that Danny's able to convert that just into straight value on his side, you know. He just got a creature for nothing. Just really well
basically
played.
Just a removal spell.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, at the cost of nothing.
Right, and that second part is what's important about the play.
Forgus draws his card for the turn. We know he has another whip in hand. The rest of the contents, it's unsure at this point.
He has a 3-card hand.
Looks like maybe a Courser of Crewfix hanging out over there too. He's in some real trouble right now though.
Yeah, it's not bad here, but Danny just continues to put pressure on the board.
I think that's so tough when you're playing against Obs on aggro too, is these creatures are good early and they're good late. Death Dealer, Fleece Main Line, great on turn 2, great on turn 6. As Death Dealer is certainly showing right now.
Yeah, they don't get outclassed very easily.
Ooh, that card was a Den Protector. Don't know if Danny saw that. I caught it. Top cards of Thoughtseize.
Yeah, you can tell Jim not thrilled about that one.
You know, much like game 1, where he drew back-to-back Thoughtseizes at the wrong time. That's going to be a morph now. That'll be the Den Protector. Last card in hands, Whip of Erebos. Jessup knows that. Jessup can probably deduce what this morph is, too.
Yeah, there's not much it could be outside of Den Protector.
Now, there is that Sagu Mauler in the main deck.
There's Sagu Mauler
in the board.
There's one Rattleclaw Mystic in the main.
Yep. But I think in this situation for Danny, your assumption is, okay, that's probably Den Protector. And at this point, Den Protector is not even very good because of Anafenza being in play and just not really much to return in the graveyard either.
That's the weird thing about Deathmist Raptor. You just don't see him get morphed very often.
Not too much.
Not never, but...
Jessup tapping some mana right now.
Well, eventually he's going to draw a land, and when he does, he'll start activating Tastiker.
Yep. He's going to activate Tastiker now, though. 1 is a land. 2 is a land. Ding-a-ding-ding.
That was breaking the rules. That's only supposed to happen when you have no graveyard. Damn. I mean, and that's huge. That may actually mean that he has a lethal attack here because he can make Jim sacrifice. Well, no, wait. He's played Courser. I will stand corrected. He cannot necessarily get the whip off the board.
True. Very true.
I was going to say he'll just make him sacrifice the whip. But it is target player sacrifices an enchantment, so there is Courser.
And you see the order of the cards, too.
Right, you
which is very
can't
important.
fight away the Courser and then make them sack an enchantment. They sack first.
Yep. When you're doing modular cards like this, you go in the order of the things that are listed. So you'll see the target player sacrifices an enchantment is ahead of target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. That said, Danny's still going to play this Tremocus command and just to figure out exactly how he wants to use it. Which is Anafenza is going to fight the Morph, which is Den Protector, and sacrifice an enchantment, most likely.
That's just going to work. Both of Jim's plays for the turn, getting killed by the 1 card.
Yep. And they get exiled, too, because Anafenza is in play, which is pretty important.
Yeah, so Jim will gain the 4, go up to... No, only gain 2. Only one of them fought, go up to 10. Now the question is, Danny has to do some counting. He has 12, 14, 17 power worth of creatures in play. If he swings, the biggest one gets blocked, so 13 gets through plus a 1/1 counter. So, well, not necessarily, yeah. So 14 gets through. Jim gains 4 off Sidisi. This should be exactly lethal.
Yeah, I think if you put the counter on the smaller shots of Death Dealer.
If you put it on anything that's not Siege Rhino or Tasker, you can't put it on Siege Rhino or Tasker. If you put it on either Death Dealer, you're good.
Yeah. Because basically, you want to make an attack so basically that
Sidisi blocks 4 damage.
A 4 power creature, correct.
Yes. You can't give her a situation where Sidisi can block 5. But you see here, you 3 4s, 2 3s, that's 18. Jim will take 14, gain 4, go exactly to 0 on the attack.
Danny Jessup going to win this match here over Jim Forgus. 2 games to 0. Obs on aggro will take care of Sultai Reanimator. Comes in with 2 buys, lost round 3, bouncing back now up to 3-1. Super important tournament for him, as he knows he took the trip out here from the New York area. Good to actually get a win on the board now for Danny.
You see Jim here showing some of his sideboard cards. Possibly he was supposed to, if he could have CDC'd for Crux of Fate that game, maybe life would have been different.
And I think life is very different because it's tough to even say if Danny even sees Crux of Fate coming.
Yeah, I think Crux of Fate, Hornet Queen, there's a lot of good stuff he could have gotten there.
Well, congratulations, Danny Jessup. We're going to come back to the booth here. I think we got another match coming for you guys here in just a moment.